Today we're building something like this. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at a weather app that uses the browser's geolocation API, takes the longitude and latitude from that, sends it to the open weather map, gets the weather and displays it in the tab instead of on the page. So let's do it. So let's have a look at our starting point here. It's just a HTML page with some styling, a heading, a subheadline, another subheadline, and importing the script. So this here is what we have so far. First, let's get our position using the browser's geolocation API. And to use that, we use navigator.geolocation.getCurrentPosition. And this method takes a success callback and an error callback. So let's create those functions. Now we have a success function and an error function. So let's pass those in. What we also should do is that we should check if the browser supports this. Okay, so now we get a question here that localhost wants to use my location, and I will allow that. And then we get logged out our longitude and latitude. So that's great, so that's a success for our first step. But since there are a few unknowns here, like does the browser support geolocation and will the user allow it? I'm gonna refactor this to look a little nicer. Okay, now I did some refactoring here. So we have this function called initializeApp that takes a callback function, and this callback is being called on success. It's being called with an object that has no error, but it has the position. But if we get an error, we call the callback with an object that has an error message. And the same thing if the browser doesn't support geolocation, we get a different error specifying why it failed. So I think this is a bit nicer. And then when we call this initializeApp function, we can respond differently to if we get an error or not. So I think this is a bit cleaner. So here is the new line that is logging out the geolocation position. So on this line here is when we can start the app. And maybe I can even rename this anonymous function to something that is telling more about what the function actually does or when it's run. Okay, so now I gave that function a name, which is on geolocation response. So if we get no errors, then everything is okay. We can go to the next step of the app, or else we alert the user that there was an error and what the error is, or we just say that there was some other error that we don't know what it was. Our next step is really fun. If everything was okay, we have some coordinates, then we want to use the open weather map to pass in those coordinates and then get some weather back. So here we want to call a function called something like fetch weather, and we pass in the response dot, what did I call it? Coordinates? Pos. Like that. And for now we can just log out the response from that API. So let's create the function now. Fetch weather, we get the position. We're gonna need to create a URL. And as you saw maybe earlier, I have the URL base here, which is just the open weather map URL and then API key that you need to pass on. But what we need to add as query parameters are the longitude and latitude. So let me just type this out real quick. Start with the URL base, and then I'm gonna use template literals here. Since we already have a query parameter, to add another one, we can just use the what is it called? What is it called? The ampersand. Yeah, the ampersand. Lat equals post dot. I think it was called maybe latitude. And I guess all that we're interested in here is longitude and latitude, so we can destructure this. So we don't even have to type a post here. We're going to use fetch here, which is asynchronous, so we should make this whole function asynchronous so that we can await the response. Const weather data, and this is a trick that I learned from Thomas Weibenfalk, which is also a Swedish YouTuber, that we await and then we make parentheses and we await again, because there's a promise returned from fetch and from the .json function. Console log weather data. Okay, so we do get a bad request here. Is it long? Maybe it's just long. Oh, we got a 200. Oh, here's some weather, I think. List DT main weather. Okay, so today at 12, weather clear. Weather is clear, and that seems correct. It's very clear, very hot outside. So next part is to use the weather data somehow, and I would suggest creating a function called on weather data. So I guess one thing that we could do, because if you look at the HTML here, I did say getting location, and from the geolocation API we just get longitude and latitude, but I think if you saw the response here from the open weather map, we do get like the closest city to our coordinates. So I think it would be nice to display your location in the HTML here. So that's the first thing we could do. Get element by ID, and I think I called it location. Inner HTML should be equal to data.city.name. Instead of just console logging the weather data here, we should call the onWeatherData function and pass in the data, weather data. Oh, we got it. I'm actually in Gothenburg, but Open Weather Map thinks that I'm in Ringön, which is an island outside of Gothenburg. Not sure why, but it's not super off, but Gothenburg is quite big, so I would have thought that it would pick it up, but for us it's fine. Okay, so I moved my location ID to just the getting location part, because then I will get to keep this little map that I have here. Okay, so I will refine this by destructuring city and list, which is the list of coming weather. You can console log the list now, because we're gonna work with the weather data. So we have 40 weather points coming up. I think it's giving me like 5 days or something. But what I want to create is just a short string that's gonna be in the document title, so it will show up in the tab. That is the first letter of today, the weekday, and the first letter of the coming days, and for each letter there should be an emoji showing what the weather will be like. So we need to parse out the weather descriptions and also just keep one weather description per day, preferably like in the middle of the day. So should we take 1500 hours every day and use that as the daily weather? It's not super exact maybe, but it would be we'll be fine. So we should first parse this list of weather to be just these. We should filter for the 1500 hours, and then we should parse out the weather description for those and have those in a list, because that's what we're interested in. So we could do that in multiple small functions that does only one thing, but I think then we're being a little bit too good. I think we can create a function called just parse to daily description that will take the list and return us just one per day and just the descriptions. So let's call that function to daily description. To daily description, taking a list. We'll take the list. Maybe we can have a better name for this list. Weather entries. We have the dt underscore text that should include the 15:00:00. So we can mid-day entries is weather entries.filter includes, I'm blocking myself. There, now you can see it. Includes 15:00:00. That should give us only the midday entries, and then we should map these, midday entries map, and now we want to convert it to just the descriptions. What was the thing again? Did I stop logging data? Yeah, that was, wait, I always want to clean up the console logs, but sometimes I do it too early. So let's see how we find the description. Go into an entry, we have weather, and that's an array for some reason. So we could try to take the first entry of that array and take the main. Weather 0 main to daily description list. So let's see what we get from the function. Oh, so yeah, 5 days and clear clouds, clear rain. So I think that works as it should. So now we have the base. Oh, now we need to convert like these weather descriptions to the correct emojis, because we don't want to type out clear clouds, rain and so on, because we only have a few characters to work with in the browser tab. So I will create a function maybe that takes in this list and can handle that for me. Okay, so const daily weather coming daily weather. So we should call a function maybe create weather string to pass in coming daily weather descriptions. Create weather string, we get descriptions. So first we could create this object that maps between a description and an emoji. So let me type that out. But I don't want this to be created every time we call the function, because that seems a bit wasteful. I don't want to just throw this in the global scope either. So what I usually do in this case is that I create a closure in JavaScript that has this variable inside that closure, and then there could be a function returned from this closure that could use this variable. So then this constant only has to, the code for this constant only has to run once, but the function that I use always have access to it. So I will show you what I mean here. So we could return a function here. Let's say that we rename this. Maybe we want to call the function we return this. So we could call this weather string creator. So here we take in the descriptions and then return descriptions. Let's map weather to emoji with that description, weather string creator. So when we call this function, we get a function back, which is the create weather string. So we can just declare that as a function, but it will now be a constant create weather string, which is weather string creator. So that will return a function, we'll store that in create weather string, and that is something we can then use. So maybe we can put this in the top. So now we have a create weather string function from the weather string creator. So where are we? Oh yeah, here's where we are. Create weather string. Create weather string. We pass in the daily weather descriptions. We should get back the emojis. Const emojis. Call it daily weather emojis. Let's console log that. Yeah, so clear, cloudy, cloudy, clear, rain, and that seems perfectly correct. But now for the next part is that we want to have the week, the first letter of the weekday before each of those. So that could also be part of this weather string creator, that we have a function that will create the whole weather string with the weekdays and the emojis. So we could have a function local to this closure, get coming days, that would return today and 4 days coming. I will create an array of all the days that exist in a week. There we go. And in JavaScript, if you want to get today's index, you can do it like that, like this. Const day index today is a new date, which will be today's date dot get day, I think. So today is a Monday, so that I think it starts as a Sunday, just like I did in the array here. So I think it should be a 1. So it would start on Monday. So we're expecting MTWTF. We're gonna have a list of 5 days. We'll loop 5 times. So then our today's index should line up with this list. Let's say that today we get a 1 here because it's Monday. On the first, we push today first. 5 days. Let's push all days with the index of today. Maybe we should call it today's index. Today's index. So now we push a 1 here. We should get the Monday. We push Monday to 5 days. And then day index should increase. Day index plus 1. But we also need to handle if the day index goes out of bounds for this all days array. So we could do day index, well, if it's smaller than 6, then we can increase it. Otherwise we have to set it to 0 instead. Today index. Today index. So after this, in the best scenario, we have today and 4 more days in the list. Let's do it like this instead. Amount. We can set the amount here. In this create weather string, days is get coming days 5, and now we should be able to create the weather string using these two, because they're both arrays with 5 elements. So we should just be able to weather string days dot map day and index, and so for each we just take the day, which is just the first letter of the day, and then from the descriptions, oh wait, we need to do this first, and then we also need to join this. Today's index assignment constant variable. This should be a let. Okay, so now we should console log something again. Create weather string. Okay, 5 days seems to work. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the days should be okay. Descriptions dot map weather to emoji. Am I using this function? Daily weather emojis. Just set a debugger here. See if we get any wiser. Empty string. Okay, so let's go deeper. Days dot map day. First letter Oh, I'm not returning it. That's a common mistake on my part, that I forget to return from map functions. Yes! Monday clear, Tuesday cloudy, Wednesday cloudy, Thursday clear, Friday rain. It's nice. We have our string. Now we want to set the string to the tab title. We should really rename this weather string. Ooh, look at the tab. Looks so nice. And it says we are at Ringön and we have the coming weather. So it looks like I have a beautiful week to look forward to up until Friday. But that makes sense, because on Friday it's Swedish midsummer, and if you ask any Swede, they will say that they expect rain on midsummer. Because Swedes are a bit pessimistic like that when it comes to the weather, because half of the year is just darkness and rain and cold, so we don't expect to get compensated with a really nice summer, really. I did have a fun idea to create like a cool loading thing in the tab while we wait for the API to respond. So, and since this loading function will have like internal state and a set timeout, a set interval function and so on, I will do another closure that handles that internal state. So from outside the closure, all we're interested in is just setting the loading on and off. So I will call it SetLoading, a loading handler maybe, function, loading handler. So here we should have an array of the emoji moons. We will also need to keep track of what moon we're showing at the moment, so we should start at 0, so no moon. And then we know that we're going to return a setLoading function that will take a boolean. Handle is loading true. And we know that we'll have a setInterval function that we'll need to keep track of. So let loading interval, I don't know really what to call it, but if we are loading interval should be a set interval. Here we pass in a function, and how often do we do it? 100. Loading animation. And if we're not loading anymore, clear interval, loading interval. Like that. And all we need now is the function that will handle the switching of the moons. And that function will be called every 100 milliseconds. So we'll just have to use this index to change the document title to a new moon. Loading animation moon index. I guess we can reuse some of the logic for the weekdays. Moon index smaller than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so 7 here. Document dot title is equal to moons moon and then loading. So now we have a function called setLoading. Let's try, we can just call setLoading here to true. See what happens. Oh, look at that. That looks so nice. Should I make it go slower maybe? I think faster was nicer. Now we can use this setLoading function. I guess we should start the setLoading when we fetch weather. I think in order to see it now, we can do some network throttling. So I will do slow 3G now to see if it works. Oh, now it's loading. Loading. And there we have the weather. That looks great. Cool, cool, cool. I think we're almost done. There's only one thing that I want to have happen, and that is that I want the weather to be refetched at a certain interval, so that if the weather changes and you have the tab open and it runs in the background, it will update. So I'm thinking maybe once every hour. So we should call this fetch weather once every hour, but only if the geolocation is all good. So maybe in this success, or I think here would be the correct place. Set interval 1 hour is 3600 seconds, and then it's in milliseconds. We could try it to do it every 5 seconds just to see that it works. Now it got stuck in a loading state here. Why is it in a loading state? Oh, maybe this needs to be... Let me throttle the network now a bit. Yeah, I can see it. Every 5 seconds we should see a quick loading and then the weather. That's awesome. Let's go back to every hour. Really cool. I'm happy with that. I think that's about it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the content, subscribe, but only if you do like it. Let me know if you enjoyed it, if you want more content like this, or if you're more interested in backend JavaScript like Node or Deno, if you're interested in more React or more vanilla JavaScript. Any input is really helpful. So I hope you liked this video. I think it's a really fun little app. It's always fun to use the browser in a weird way, and I will probably also deploy this app so you can have your little weather tab if you want to. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you again in the future.